Hey everyone, Dan here, the professional raconteur. Thought I would try something new tonight. A little something I'm going to call How I Would Do It. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take something that a lot of people are wondering about and just give you my spin on it, what I would do to make it happen. And what I'm going to focus on tonight is ever since Disney has bought out Fox, the big conversation has been what we're going to get with the Fantastic Four and the XMen being brought into the Marvel Universe. Now, I'm not going to worry about the XMen right now because I think that's the easier of the two. So let's take a look at the Fantastic Four and how exactly I would bring them into the universe. Now, my background, for those who you don't know, besides having written for 5 years for Bleeding Cool as a reporter covering both film and television, I have been writing comics for about 20 years. I do novels, I've done some screenplays, and I've even done some television. Not a lot, some. And I've got my ideas on how to do things. And this isn't necessarily saying this is how they're going to do it or how they should do it. This is just if Kevin Feige decided to give me a call and say, hey, Dan, we need a script for the Fantastic Four. What do you got? This is my answer. By the way, Kevin, I am available. Feel free to call me anytime. All right. Now, the reason I think the Fantastic Four is a little trickier than the X-Men is a couple of reasons. Number one is this. That's right. The first set of Fantastic Four movies by Tim Story, starring Jessica Alba, Ian Goffard, I know I'm getting his name wrong, Michael Chiklis, and some guy named Chris Evans. I don't know ever what happened to him. But, and they were pretty decent movies. I liked them well enough. They weren't great. They're not as good as the rest of the MCU movies, but they weren't horrible either. I mean, they were passable. The first one was definitely better than the second one. There was a lot wrong with the second one, especially the way they handled Galactus, and the need to feel that they had to push Doctor Doom back in the story again. They didn't need that. And that's an ongoing theme with Fantastic Four movies. Then, of course, we had the second film. Yeah. I don't know what Josh Trank was thinking. He basically lost the heart of the Fantastic Four, and in doing so, might have put the final coffin in the franchise when it comes to film. But is it the worst Fantastic Four movie ever? We did have this. Roger Corman. Anyway, moving on. So now that the Disney has bought out Fox and Marvel gets the Fantastic Four back, there's a lot of questions about how they're going to bring the characters in. And one of the big things is, well, where have they been? Are they a brand new team when you bring them in? Or if they've been around a while, then why didn't they help out during Infinity War and Ultron's attack and Civil War and all of these other horrific things? Where were they? Well, my answer is simple. I've got my idea, and I'm going to give you basically the 5 things I think they need to do to bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU successfully. The first thing they got to do is they need to give the film a unique feel. Second thing is they need to stay away from Doctor Doom. The third thing is they should take advantage of the fan excitement for John Krasinski and Emily Blunt to be Reed and Sue. Fourth, I think they need to make the origin work in the established MCU storyline. So they've got to connect it somehow. And then fifth, by the time the movie is done, the Fantastic Four have to be a prominent part of the MCU. Ant-Man came in a little later, but he really wasn't a prominent part. He was still on the outskirts, and until Age of Endgame, he really wasn't that big of a character. He had his own thing, but he was on the outside. Well, this has got to be different. The Fantastic Four are too important characters to not be major. So, now I'm going to go through each one of these and just let you know how I would handle it, like I said. Now, the first thing to do is to give the film a unique feel. I would set it in the age of Mad Men. Yes. late 1950s, early 1960s, when the book was actually done. In 1961, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the Fantastic Four, and what they created was a monster book with heroes, because they'd been doing monster comics, and then Martin Goodman came in and said, hey, I just talked to the DC folks, and they're doing superheroes. We should do some. And Stan Lee went, okay. And he created, the Challengers of the Unknown. Bad joke. He created a team of adventurers to go up against monsters. And that's what the Fantastic Four was. It was all done during the Atomic Age, and that's what they should embrace. They should embrace the feel of those movies from the 1950s and 60s, where it was science that made monsters, and this would be a great way to do it. So that's how I would give it a unique feel, is I would embrace the Atomic Age, and I would set it in the 50s and 60s, and there really hasn't been anything in the Marvel Universe set in that era. There's some characters that would carry over from S.H.I.E.L.D., but not a lot of heroes or anything. So you've got this clean slate to work with. You could still bring in Peggy Carter, Howard Stark, maybe a young Hank Pym, but you've got this era that no one's playing with yet. So that's where I would go. The second thing, oh God, please don't do Dr. Doom. Doom is a big, complex character, and the mistake they made in the first movie is they tried to tie his origin into that of the Fantastic Four. Dr. Doom doesn't need to have any powers. His power is his brain. He is the evil Tony Stark. The mask is because his arrogance. He needs to be his own movie. So create the Fantastic Four in the first movie, bring in Dr. Doom in movie number 2. Now, when you put Dr. Doom aside, now you got to find a villain. There's some really good villains in the Marvel Universe for the Fantastic Four. You've got the first guy that appeared, the Mole Man. The Mole Man is a great opening villain. I don't think he's enough to carry a film, but he could be fun to play with. I don't know. Something to think about. Okay, let's move on. Red Ghost. Another villain from the old era of the Fantastic Four. I don't think he's big enough for a first movie either. Okay? Puppet Master. Puppet Master is great. Puppet Master ties into Alicia Masters, Ben Grimm's love. Again, not really good for a first film. Sliding on. The Wizard. Moving on. Now, Galactus, on the other hand, is a little too big. Galactus is going to be a movie unto himself as well, like Doctor Doom. I think Galactus and Silver Surfer can be introduced at the same time. It's definitely a second or third movie, not a first movie. So how about the Super Skrull? I think we're kind of playing with Captain Marvel territory here. You might be able to get away with the Super Skrull, but you kind of need to bring the Skrulls in a little bit more. Maybe save them later on. Maybe let Captain Marvel have the Super Skrull. And once, maybe a cameo from the Fantastic Four in Captain Marvel 2. Hey, who knows? So what does that leave us? The perfect villain. Annihilus. Because not only is his backstory not too complicated, he's visually stunning, and with him comes the Negative Zone, and the Negative Zone is going to play a big part in my version of the origin. So, let's move on to the next part, and we'll get back to that. Now, the third thing I wanted to talk about was the casting. People really want John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. They've already been in discussion with Marvel for years. John was up for playing Captain America. Emily was up for playing Black Widow. They've already got... They're married in real life. They've already got that romantic connection that will just immediately come to the screen. We saw it in A Quiet Place. We see them work together well. It's too easy. They got to just take it. Just take the win. It's like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, or Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Some things just make sense. Run with it. Leave it alone. When you go to the rest of the cast, you can go younger. You can go different with Johnny Blaze, with Ben Grimm. My idea, I would go with Dwayne Johnson, because he could play Ben Grimm before he changes, and he can just voice the character after that. You get the name. He gets to play in the MCU, and he can still go off and be Black Adam in the other one. I don't know if they're willing to play with him, but I think Dwayne Johnson would be a great voice for Ben Grimm. But there's others that could do it as well. But yeah, I think he'd be a fun thing. But you can do a stunt casting there, and you could absolutely do a stunt casting for Annihilus. You could go huge and call in, like, I don't know, Robert Downey Jr. Not Robert Downey Jr. Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro would be a fun voice for Annihilus. He could be powerful. He could be overwhelming at the same time. It's just a voice. So he doesn't have to be on screen, and they don't have to do screen cap with him if they don't want to. You could get another actor to pose, but you could go that route, or you could go specifically voice and go Kevin Graveau from the Underworld movies with that amazing voice. That would be incredible. So you could go that route. But your main casting, you get Emily Blunt, you get John Krasinski. The rest of the cast can fill in easily, and you're going to get fans in the seats no matter what. Now, moving on to the origin itself. You got to lock it into the MCU, and everything in the MCU seems connected. There's a reason for it. Spider-Man may be the only one that doesn't connect that well, and they probably could. But anyway, 1950s, 1960s, S.H.I.E.L.D. has the Tesseract. And they were trying to figure out how to use it and trying to figure out making weapons. And who would they bring in to help with that? But, of course, Reed Richards, one of the biggest brains in the world. You bring him in to test it. He starts checking it out, realizes there's a cosmic connection to it. It's a cosmic item. So maybe what they need to do is to examine it outside of Earth's atmosphere. Solution, experimental rocket. You make Sue Storm a researcher with him. You make Johnny and Ben the pilots for the ship. You blast them off into space to examine the Tesseract in space, in orbit. They come across a patch of gamma radiation clouds, and then when they go through it, it reacts with the Tesseract, causing it to expand out energy, to shoot out energy in a way kind of like Captain Marvel. And in doing so, it floods them, and it also opens a portal, which is something the Tesseract can do. And where does it open a portal to? The negative zone. Yes. So now these characters get pulled into the negative zone, and when they get there, they realize they have these new powers, and they become the Fantastic Four in the negative zone. The Tesseract itself doesn't go into the negative zone. The portal closes, the ship has nobody on it, it crashes, S.H.I.E.L.D. recovers the Tesseract and just move on, saying that their team is missing. Not that outlandish for the MCU. In the negative zone, then we come up with almost a John Carter-like movie, because you have you drop them into the middle of a war between two tribes. One led by Annihilus, who has the Cosmic Control Rod. Now, the Cosmic Control Rod is an important part of Marvel Comics history. Like many things in Marvel Comic history, it has a horrible name. The Tesseract is not the name of the object in comic book history. It was the Cosmic Cube. It became the Tesseract because the Cosmic Cube is a 1960s construct name. So is the Cosmic Control Rod. So let's make a new name. So they come up with this new name, but that is the only thing that can get them back home. They need the Cosmic Control Rod to get home, therefore they have a stake in the battle. Now, the two warring tribes are Annihilus and Blastar, and they're leading their tribes, and so the Fantastic Four ends up being captured by Blastar's group, and of course they have to fight in a tribal thing and prove themselves, and the Thing versus Blastar would be an awesome battle, and then you end up with them having to help with this war, and you see them trying to survive on all this alien landscape. And that's your basic movie. And you film it in the same new technology they're using for The Mandalorian, with the screens and inside. I think they call it the volume. Don't remember the name. But you basically create this amazing alien landscape for them to be on. And you are creating a unique entry into the Marvel Universe. You're creating this atomic age monster film. And you introduce these major characters. So that's where I would go with that. Now, how do you make them prominent? That was the fifth thing, was how do you make them prominent in the MCU? If they're in the negative zone and they're in the 1950s, 60s, how do they become prominent today? Well, that's because when they finally get a hold of the Cosmic Control Run, you probably see where I'm going to go with this. They open the portal, they return to Earth to discover it's now. It's modern day. It is post-Snap, it's post-Endgame. And when they return, they have a whole new world to deal with because everything's changed. Time passes differently in the negative zone. Now you have this group of superheroes who were suddenly thrust into a world 60 years later. And that's your franchise. That's what makes them unique in the MCU, is that kind of like Captain America in the sense that they're men out of time, they're people out of time. But Cap was frozen in ice. These guys just blinked an eye and it was gone. Now they're back. You can play with that where they didn't play with it that much with Captain America. Your second movie could be them adjusting and learning that, oh, Reed had some patents that he made before this all happened, and now he's got rich, worth a fortune. And, and then that's how they get the Baxter Building and all this other stuff. There's so much you could do with this idea that you can just make it move forward. And you get someone like Deborah Chow to direct it. Partly because I think she's amazing. The work she's done on some of the TV shows she's done and the stuff on The Mandalorian is just gorgeous. Some of the best episodes were hers. And she's already familiar with this new technology, which would you shoot it that way. And again, because you're doing all alien landscapes, after they go into the negative zone, you could, you've put it all in there, and then you can really make a beautiful movie. So that's where I would go with it. I would get John Krasinski, I would get Emily Blunt, I would get Deborah Chow, I would write the hell out of script if they would let me. I would get some big names to be the voices of Annihilus and Ben Grimm and Blastar. Hell, if you get De Niro, you should get Pacino to play Blastar just for the fun of that. And you just make this big, fun, atomic age monster battle movie with the Fantastic Four, and you embrace everything Stan and Jack did, the family aspect of the characters, the sci-fi aspect, and the bloody monsters. You make some major looking monsters the creatures fighting in the negative zone could be just stunningly great. So that's where I would go with it. That's how I would do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, this was just for entertainment fun. If you disagree with me, if you like what I said, feel free to comment below, rip it apart, add to it. Let's have some fun with it. If you want to hear more of these or some of the other stuff I do, please hit the subscribe button, click the like button, help me build this channel a bit. And that's it. You can check out something else I've done. There's probably a video here or somewhere up here. I'm still getting used to that. And I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you're all keeping safe, and talk to you soon.